Breaking tonight, the FBI has carried out coordinated raids at multiple homes as part of a major federal investigation, with authorities reporting the seizure of significant cash and weapons.
What you are about to hear represents the largest domestic financial fraud network ever dismantled on American soil. This is not an exaggeration. This is not speculation. This is the official finding of a joint federal task force that has spent 4 years tracking money, bodies, and lies across 17 states. Those words came from a podium in Washington, D.C. on a cold Tuesday morning. The man speaking wore no expression. Behind him stood representatives from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Department of Justice. None of them smiled. None of them looked relieved. Because what they had uncovered was not a crime. It was an architecture. $1.9 billion in cash and assets seized. Over 400 firearms recovered. 37 homes raided simultaneously across Minneapolis, Columbus, Seattle, and San Diego. And at the center of it all, a network that federal investigators would come to call the most sophisticated fraud-to-terror pipeline ever documented inside the United States. Let me show you how deep this goes. And understand something before we begin.
The next part is worse.
4:17 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The streets of the Cedar Riverside neighborhood lay silent under a pale winter fog. Streetlights cast yellow halos over frozen sidewalks. Steam rose from grates. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and then went quiet, as if it sensed what was coming. 12 blocks away, 47 federal vehicles sat idling in a staging lot behind an abandoned warehouse. FBI tactical units. ICE Homeland Security investigations teams. DEA agents on loan from the Chicago field office. U.S. Marshals. Minnesota State Patrol providing outer perimeter support. All of them waiting for a single word. At 4:19 a.m., that word came through encrypted radio channels. Execute. Within 90 seconds, strike teams hit 14 locations across the Twin Cities simultaneously. They moved through frozen alleys and up narrow staircases. They breached reinforced doors with hydraulic rams. Flashbang grenades lit up living rooms. Men in black tactical gear poured through shattered entryways like shadows given weight. In one home, agents found 3 generations of a single family sitting in a basement counting cash by hand. Stacks of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands. Duffel bags stuffed beneath floorboards. A false wall behind a bookshelf leading to a room filled with encrypted laptops and prepaid phones still in their packaging. In another location, a 2-story house that neighbors believed belonged to a quiet nonprofit worker, agents discovered something far more disturbing. 17 firearms including 2 AR-15 style rifles. Night vision equipment. Detailed maps of federal buildings in downtown Minneapolis. And a steel lockbox containing over $400,000 in cash alongside a handwritten ledger with dates, names, and wire transfer codes. Across the city, the pattern repeated. Cash. Weapons. Communications equipment. And documents that painted a picture no one wanted to believe. By 6 a.m., federal agents had seized over $87 million in cash from the Minneapolis raids alone. They had detained 41 individuals. And they had recovered something that would change the entire direction of the investigation. A single encrypted hard drive. Recovered from a hollowed-out wall cavity in a home registered to a nonprofit organization that claimed to provide childcare services. The drive was military-grade protected. It took federal cryptographers 11 hours to crack. What they found inside would require a national security briefing. 3:42 p.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Division. Quantico, Virginia. The room was cold and dim, lit only by the glow of monitors arranged in a semicircle around a central workstation. Analysts sat in silence, scrolling through terabytes of financial data, communication logs, and organizational charts. On the main screen, a network diagram pulsed with thousands of interconnected nodes.
Shell companies.
Non-profit organizations.
Daycare centers.
Translation services. Immigration assistance programs. Employment agencies. Each one a spoke on a wheel that stretched across 17 states and 4 foreign countries. The operation had a name. Federal investigators would come to call it Project Jana. And at its center sat a single figure. A fictional political operative named Hassan Warfa, a former city council liaison in Minneapolis who had spent 15 years building what appeared to be a legitimate community services empire. Daycare centers that received federal child care assistance funds. Job training programs that collected state and federal grants. Immigration assistance nonprofits that charged fees while also receiving government subsidies. On paper, Warfa was a success story. A refugee who had built a network of organizations serving his community. In press releases and local news segments, he smiled beside mayors and state legislators.
He received awards.
He gave speeches about integration and opportunity. But the encrypted drive told a different story. According to federal investigators, Whorfa's network had systematically defrauded federal and state assistance programs of over $1.9 billion over a 12-year period. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Create shell daycare centers. Enroll children who did not exist or who were enrolled at multiple facilities simultaneously. Bill the government for services never rendered.
Collect the payments.
Move the money through a cascade of shell companies and overseas accounts.
Repeat.
But the fraud was only the foundation. What happened to the money afterward was what brought in the national security agencies. According to wire transfer records recovered from the encrypted drive, over $300 million have been funneled to accounts linked to Al-Shabaab, the Somali terrorist organization responsible for attacks across East Africa and linked to Al-Qaeda. The money moved through Hawala networks, untraceable cash transfers, and cryptocurrency exchanges. It paid for weapons. It paid for recruitment. It paid for operations. This is not corruption.
This is not theft.
This is material support for terrorism laundered through the American social safety net. And the network ran deeper than anyone imagined. The next 72 hours saw the largest coordinated domestic fraud takedown in FBI history. 5 a.m. Columbus, Ohio. Federal agents hit a cluster of properties in the Northland neighborhood, an area with a significant Somali American population. They found over $40 million in cash hidden in a single warehouse registered as a halal meat distribution center. They found falsified business records for 17 daycare centers that existed only on paper. They found communications linking local operators to Whorfa's Minneapolis network. 6:15 a.m. Seattle, Washington. ICE Homeland Security investigations teams raided a network of employment agencies and translation services. They found evidence of identity fraud on a massive scale. Thousands of social security numbers. Fabricated work histories. Falsified immigration documents. And bank records showing millions in federal benefits flowing to addresses that did not exist.
7:30 a.m.
San Diego, California. A joint FBI-DEA task force hit a series of storefronts in City Heights. What they found there added a new dimension to the investigation. Over $200,000 in cash. 47 firearms. And evidence linking the operation to smuggling networks that moved more than just money.
Human beings.
Migrants brought across borders and then absorbed into the network as ghost employees, their identities used to file for benefits they would never see.
8:45 a.m. Phoenix, Arizona.
Federal agents discovered a logistics hub operating out of a trucking company. The company had contracts to move goods across 6 states. Its manifests showed food products and textiles. But hidden compartments in its vehicles had moved over $60 million in cash across state lines over the previous 3 years. By noon on the second day, federal agencies had executed warrants in 11 states. They had seized a combined $1.4 billion in cash and assets. They had detained over 200 individuals. And they had identified what they would describe as a parallel financial infrastructure built beneath the legitimate economy. The operations scale defied conventional categories.
It was fraud.
It was money laundering.
It was terror financing. It was identity theft.
It was human smuggling. It was all of these things simultaneously, woven together into a system that had operated in plain sight for over a decade. But the most disturbing discovery came from the investigation's next phase. The infiltration of law enforcement and government itself. According to court documents that would remain sealed for months, Whorfa's network had compromised individuals at every level of the system designed to prevent exactly this kind of fraud. State auditors who overlooked red flags in exchange for payments routed through shell consulting firms. County officials who approved daycare licenses for facilities that existed only as addresses. Federal benefits administrators who processed claims without verification, their cooperation secured through a combination of bribery and community pressure. Investigators found evidence of at least 47 government employees across 8 states who had received payments from the network. Some were paid in cash. Others received gifts. Others had family members employed by shell companies at inflated salaries. And then there were the law enforcement connections. In Minneapolis, investigators identified 3 police officers who had provided advance warning of raids and investigations targeting network members. In Columbus, a county sheriff's deputy had been feeding information about federal interest in local operations. In Seattle, a state investigator assigned to benefits fraud had actively suppressed complaints and delayed referrals to federal agencies. One senior FBI analyst, a woman with 17 years of counterterrorism experience, sat in a briefing room and spoke words that would echo through the agency for years. We are not looking at a criminal enterprise that corrupted some officials. We are looking at an enterprise that was designed from the beginning to corrupt officials. The corruption was not a bug.
It was a feature. It was the business model.
Federal prosecutors would eventually charge over 300 individuals. They would secure convictions against state employees, county officials, and law enforcement officers. They would extradite operators to face terror-related charges in federal court. But the damage assessment went beyond numbers. The Government Accountability Office would later estimate that the network had stolen over $2.3 billion from federal programs over its operational lifespan. The money had funded daycare centers that did not exist, employees who were not real, and services that were never provided. It had flowed through American banks, American wire services, and American shell companies. And significant portions of it had ended up funding violence half a world away.
What does this mean?
What should you take from this story? It means that infrastructure is invisible until it fails. It means that systems designed to help the vulnerable can be turned against them. It means that trust, once weaponized, becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. The families in Cedar Riverside who relied on legitimate childcare services saw their community stigmatized. The refugees who came to America seeking safety found themselves caught between a criminal network and the suspicion of authorities. The government employees who processed benefits in good faith discovered that their colleagues had betrayed the system they all served. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it grows quietly, in paperwork and wire transfers and shell companies. Sometimes it smiles for cameras and accepts awards and gives speeches about community service. Sometimes it builds networks that look like charity but function like machinery. And sometimes, the only way to see it clearly is after it has been torn apart. The investigation continues. Indictments are still being unsealed. Trials are still being scheduled. The full scope of Project Jana may not be known for years. But what we know now is enough. We know that $1.9 billion was stolen from programs designed to feed children and train workers and help refugees build new lives. We know that significant portions of that money funded terrorism. We know that dozens of government employees and law enforcement officers looked the other way, or actively participated, while this happened. And we know that it happened in America.
In our cities.
Under our noses. For over a decade. If you are still watching, take a moment to consider what this story means for the systems you trust. Consider the daycare your neighbor uses. Consider the nonprofit that asks for your donation. Consider the government program that processes your benefits. Consider the assumption that oversight exists and functions and catches fraud before it metastasizes into something worse. This is not a story about one community or one ethnicity or one political perspective. This is a story about what happens when systems fail. When trust is exploited. When silence becomes complicity. The federal agents who executed those raids did not wake up that morning wanting to tear apart a community. They woke up because intelligence indicated that money was flowing to people who wanted to kill Americans and American allies. They woke up because the alternative was to let it continue. And the community members who cooperated with investigators, who provided tips and testimony and risked their own standing, did not betray their neighbors. They protected them. They chose law over silence. They chose accountability over tribal loyalty. That is the lesson buried in this story. That accountability is not an attack. That oversight is not oppression. That asking hard questions about where money goes and who benefits is not prejudice. It is citizenship. The final briefing on Project Jana took place in a secure conference room in Washington, D.C. Attendees included representatives from the FBI, DHS, ICE, the Department of Justice, and the intelligence community. The briefing lasted 4 hours. At its conclusion, the lead investigator, a career FBI agent with 3 decades of experience in financial crimes, stood before the room and offered a single observation. We talk about border security. We talk about terrorism. We talk about fraud. We treat these as separate problems with separate solutions. But what this case shows us is that they are not separate. They are connected. The same networks that steal money also move people. The same systems that launder cash also finance violence. The same corruption that compromises one agency spreads to others. He paused and looked around the room. We did not catch this early. We did not catch it because it looked like charity. We did not catch it because the people running it smiled at cameras and won awards. We did not catch it because we trusted systems that had already been compromised. We caught it because eventually, the money talked. Eventually, someone followed the wire transfers. Eventually, someone asked where the children were. The room was silent. That is the lesson. Follow the money. Ask the questions. Do not assume that good intentions produce good outcomes. Do not assume that community leaders serve their communities. Verify. Audit. Investigate. Because the alternative is this. He gestured at the wall behind him, covered in photographs and network diagrams, and seized currency and recovered weapons. The alternative is $1.9 billion stolen from children and families and workers, funneled to people who want to destroy everything we have built. That is the alternative to vigilance. That is the cost of trust without verification.
This story is fictional.
The names are invented. The specifics are dramatized. But the patterns are real. The vulnerabilities are real. The need for vigilance is real. If you found this story valuable, share it.
Comment below.
Let others know that these patterns exist and that awareness is the first defense. And remember that the next investigation is already underway. The next network is already operating. The next betrayal of trust is already in progress. The only question is whether we will catch it in time.